How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, March 14th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite profile. More than that, I'm going to do a GOAT profile for one of the greatest basketball players to ever play this game, Stephen Curry, the GOAT starting point guard for the Golden State Warriors, and now the NBA's all-time leader in three-pointers made, turns 34. And hopefully with this episode, I will go into depth and go look at how he's been able to impact his team on a micro level, game in and game out. And I'm also going to zoom out and look at how he's been able to affect the game at a macro level. He is a 6'2", 185-pound basketball player that will go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's made more three-pointers than anybody else in the history of the game. And not only does he make an incredible volume of threes, he can score from virtually anywhere on the floor. He can make passes to anywhere on the floor. Considering the average NBA player is about half a foot taller and about 30 pounds heavier, the fact that Steph Curry is really dominating the NBA at this time is virtually amazing. It's really amazing. It's really crazy to really think about and internalize how small he is compared to the average NBA player. And even the fact that his shooting has really changed the way the game is played. Stephen Curry is one of the most, if not the most influential player to come through the NBA in its 75 years. So I kind of digressed. I've gotten a little bit into his game as he's mainly known for his ability to knock down three-pointers. That's what he's going to be remembered for, in addition to being able to do everything else. Originally born in Akron, Ohio, the same city as LeBron, his dad was an NBA player, was Del Curry, one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history. But Stephen Curry wanted to go play at Virginia Tech where his dad played, but they wouldn't offer him. After being one of the best young high schoolers in the game, colleges would be reluctant to give him offers because of his size. But regardless, he would go on to play with the Davidson Wildcats. Steph Curry would go on to play 3 seasons at Davidson. His very first season would be in 2006-2007, and that at the very time would go on to be his age 18 season. And Stephen Curry's very first full season with the Davidson Wildcats, he would earn his starting spot. He would start 33 of the 34 matchups he played in a season where Davidson would go on to finish with a 29-5 record. After winning their bracket, they would go on to make it into the tournament as a 13 seed. And once they made it into the tournament, they would actually end up losing in the first round. Stephen Curry's first season would see him average about 31 minutes a game. He was averaging 21.5 points per game as a freshman while shooting 46% from the field. He was shooting 48% from the three as a freshman in college while taking almost 9 threes a game. He was making 3.5 of them as a freshman. He would also go on to shoot 86% from the foul line as well. Alongside his 21.5 points, he would average 4.6 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.8 steals as well, as he would go on to establish himself as one of the best young players at Davidson. As a freshman, he would go on to make the first team All-Southern Conference, but as a freshman, making that first team was at least the first step in him proving that he was that type of player. His second season at Davidson would be his age 20 season, his age 19 season. His age 19 season came in 2007-2008. He would start all 36 of the games he played in a season where Davidson would end up going all the way to the regional final, making it to the Elite Eight, after finishing as a ranked team this year and quite arguably their best season with Steph Curry. They would finish with a 29-7 record at the conclusion of the season as they made it to the tournament as a 10 seed. While he would see his minutes jump up from about 31 to 33 minutes a game, he would not play more games than he would in his sophomore year. In his sophomore season, he saw his points jump up from 21.5 to 25.9. As a sophomore, he was averaging 26 points per game while shooting 48% from the field, which was better than what he did the year before. He would shoot 44% from three, which would be the highest percentage he shot in college. All of this while taking the most three-point attempts in a college season. He would average 10 threes a game and average 4.5 makes a game. And this is while people in the NBA weren't shooting a crazy amount of threes. He would go on to shoot 89% from the foul line as well, which would be his best free throw shooting year in college as well. Along his 25.9 points per game, he would average 4.6 rebounds, which is what he did his freshman year. He averaged 2.9 assists, and he would average 2 steals as well. Saw his blocks go up 0.4. That would be his collegiate career high in blocks. Following that second season at Davidson, that would see them make it all the way to the Elite Eight. Stephen Curry was named to the first team All-Southern Conference for the second year in a row and his second year playing there. He would also be named the SoCon Player of the Year. This is the first time in which he was named the Southern Conference Player of the Year. But considering he was still at Davidson and felt he had a lot more to prove, he came back for his junior season at Davidson, which would be his age 20 season. In his age 20 season in 2008-2009, Stephen Curry would start all 34 of the games he played in a season where Davidson would finish with a 27-8 record. They started the season as a ranked team, but they would end up missing the tournament. In his third and final season at Davidson, Steph Curry would go from 33.1 to 33.7 minutes a game. He would see his points increase from 26 to 28.6, all while shooting 45% from the field. This was the only season he would attempt 20 field goals a game. He would also go on to make 38% of his threes, as this was the only season in college he didn't make at least 40% of his threes. But 38.7 is still ridiculously high, and any player would be lucky to finish with that in a season. He would also have an 87% free throw percentage on the year, making it all 3 years that he would shoot at least 85% from the line in college. Very tough feat to do, considering he was attempting about at least 4 free throws every single game. Alongside his 28.6 career high in points in college, he would also go on to average 4.4 rebounds, which was on par. He would see his assists nearly double from 2.9 to 5.6 while still seeing his points go up. His steals went up from 2 to 2.5 as well. And this was in a season where he virtually improved in almost every stat, from being the Southern Conference Player of the Year. In 2009, he would go on to lead the NCAA in scoring, by the way. And he would go on to make the first team All-SoCon for the third year in a row, making it all 3 years that he was there. He would be named the SoCon Player of the Year for the second year in a row. Not many times you see a player win the Player of the Year back-to-back, or at least more than once. And after being named a consensus second-team All-American his sophomore year, he was named a consensus first-team All-American after his incredible tenure at Davidson. After his 3-year stretch, he would go on to be taken with the 7th overall pick in the 2009 in the NBA draft. And then for context, this was the draft in which Blake Griffin, who's still playing in the NBA, was taken number 1. James Harden was drafted by the Oklahoma City Thunder out of Arizona State with the 3rd pick. Stephen Curry would end up being the 3rd point guard taken, if I'm not including James Harden or Tyreke Evans, who would go on to be named the Rookie of the Year as a point guard. Stephen Curry was taken after Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, who's taken a couple of picks ahead of DeMar DeRozan. He was taken by the Toronto Raptors with the 9th pick out of USC. Other notable picks from this draft include Drew Holiday, who was taken with the 17th overall pick by the Philadelphia 76ers and UCLA. He's a defending champ. But of course, Stephen Curry was taken 7th out of this draft, the 3rd point guard, and arguably the 5th dominant ball handler that was taken out of that draft. Not many people expected him to really bounce off like this. He even wanted to fall to the Knicks, who had the next pick, but he would go on to be drafted by the Golden State Warriors, where he has played his entire career. Whereas to this date, he has now officially played this, where he is now in his 12th season with the Warriors. His first season with the Golden State Warriors was his age 21 season in 2009-2010. In that season, Stephen Curry would go on to start 77 of the 80 games he played in a season where the Warriors would go on to finish with a 26-56 record. They had the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. However, in this in this season, Stephen Curry would average 36 minutes a game in his very first NBA season. He would average 17.5 points as a rookie while shooting 46% from the field. He shot 43.7% from 3, which would be an incredible 3-point percentage to start off as a rookie. He would also go down to shoot 88% from the free throw line as well. Of course, shooting incredibly well from all spaces in the shots that he got. Alongside his 17.5 points, he would average 4.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists, which is pretty on par with what he was doing at Davidson, at least in the rebounds and assists category. He would average 1.9 steals per game as well as 0.2 blocks. At the conclusion of the season, the Warriors would go on to miss the playoffs, but Steph Curry would be named to the all-rookie first team. But of course, following that first year, people started to get a sense of who Stephen Curry was. His very second season with the Golden State Warriors was his age 22 season in 2010-2011. He would go on to start all 74 of the games he played in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 36-46 record. They would win 10 more games than the previous year, as they would probably move up just one spot in the playoff picture, or they didn't make the playoffs at all, actually. Stephen Curry would actually go on to win the Sportsmanship Award in 2011. Also, he would go on to win the Skills Challenge competition in All-Star Weekend. That was the first time he was actually invited up to All-Star Weekend. In the 74 starts, he would go on to average about 33 and a half minutes, which would see him average about 2.5 less minutes than his rookie year. He would see his points per game jump up from 17 and a half to 18 and a half, all while shooting 48% from the field, an improvement from his rookie season. He shot 42% from three while making at least 2 a game, which is an improvement from his rookie season. He would also shoot 93.4% from the foul line. This is the first time he would lead the NBA in free throw percentage, as this was also the first time in his NBA career he shot at least 90% from the free throw line. Along his 18 and a half points, he would go on to average 3.9 rebounds, just half a rebound less than what he did his rookie year. He would average 5.8 assists, which was on par. He would see his steals go down from 1.9 to 1.5, as he also averaged 0.3 blocks, which was on par. So his second season would see him do roughly as much as what he did with the first, but he started to get a little more, he definitely got a little more efficient with his shooting, and being the NBA leader in free throw percentage in your rookie year is no measly feat. After this year in which the Warriors would go on to miss the playoffs, Steph Curry would, of course, return for his third season with the Golden State Warriors. His third season would be his age 23 season in 2011-2012. This was the lockout season. In the season, Steph Curry would start 23 of the 26 games he played in a season where the Warriors would go 23-43. This would be the last season before the Warriors actually missed, or this would be the 5th season straight in the Warriors' drought, but since 2007, since Monte Ellis was the most improved player. But in this season, Stephen Curry was, of course, dealing with a good amount of injuries that year. He would sprain his right ankle, and then he would subsequently sprain it in the same year. So this wouldn't necessarily be a good year for him, and the Warriors would miss the playoffs. But in this lost season for Steph Curry, he would average about 28 minutes a game. He would see his career low in points at 14.7 points per game. While shooting a high at that point, 49% from the field. He shot 45% from three, which at that point was also a career high, the first time he shot at least 45%, and making it a 3-year stretch in which he would average at least 40% from three. He would shoot 80% from the foul line, making it a 3-year stretch he would shoot at least 80%. He would go on to average 3.4 rebounds and 5.3 assists, which at that time were career lows. Even to this point, he's never averaged less rebounds, and he's averaged less assists than this. But he would go on to average 1.5 steals and 0.3 blocks. But like I said, Steph Curry was reeling from injury, trying to get himself back together. And at the end of the day, the Warriors would go on to miss the playoffs themselves. This would transition, however, into Steph Curry's 4th season with the Warriors. His age 24 season would be in 2012-2013. In this season, Stephen Curry would start all 78 of the games he played in a season where the Warriors would finish with the 6th best record in the West. They would make the playoffs for the first time since 2007, as they would go on to double their win total from the previous year in the lockout. Stephen Curry will go on to see his minutes per game jump up from 28 to 38 minutes a game, averaging the most minutes a game that Steph Curry has ever averaged in a season in his career. While averaging 38 minutes per game, he would see his points shoot up from 14.7, a career low, to 22.9. That would be the first time in his career he'd average at least 20 points a game. He did all this while shooting 45% from the field, which at that time was a career low, but but on a career high amount of field goal attempts. He would shoot 45% from three for the second year in a row. This would be the 4th year in a row he shot at least 40% from three. He would shoot 90% from the foul line, making it 2 of his first 4 years. He would shoot at least 90%, and he shot at least 80% from the free throw line his first 4 years. Alongside his 22.9 points, he would average 4 rebounds. There'll be the second time in his first 4 years he'd average at least 4 rebounds. His 6.9 assists were a career high at that point, as he had never averaged 6 assists up until that point. He would average 1.6 steals, making it the 4th year in a row he averaged at least a steal and a half. At the conclusion of the year, Stephen Curry would end up getting snubbed for the All-Star game this year. That was actually the narrative in 2013. However, he will go on to help the Warriors make it to the playoffs for their first time in a while. Once they made the playoffs, they would end up beating the Nuggets in the first round before losing in 6 to the San Antonio Spurs. And then, of course, for context, this is the year where the Spurs ended up beating the Heat, or this is the year where the Spurs ended up making it to the finals to lose to the Heat, as the Heat would end up going back-to-back with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. That would be the first time Stephen Curry sniffed the playoffs. This would transition into Steph Curry's 5th season in the NBA, his age 25 season in 2013-14. This would also be the season where Steph Curry would become an all-star for the first time. It would begin his stint where everyone would see him as a completely different player. In his age 25 season, Stephen Curry would start all 78 of the games he played for a Golden State Warriors team that finished with a 51-31 record. They would go on to win 4 more games than the previous season. And of course, within this 2013-14 season, that would see the Warriors make the playoffs again. Stephen Curry would go on to see himself average 36.5 minutes per game, a minute and a half less than his career high. He would go on to average 24 points per game, which was a point more than what he did the year before. All of this while shooting 47% from the field on the same amount of attempts. He would shoot 42% from 3 on the same amount of attempts. This would be the 5th year in a row he shot at least 40% from 3. And of course, that streak keeps on going. He would go on to shoot 88% from the foul line, making it the 5th year in a row he would shoot at least 80, and at least the 4th year in his first 5 years, he would shoot at least 88% from the line. Alongside his 24 points, he would average 4.3 rebounds, which would be one of his highs. He would average 8.5 assists, which is the highest he's ever recorded in his career. He has not averaged more assists in a season than in his very first season with Golden State. Not to mention that he would also go on to finish with 1.6 steals. In his 5th season in Golden State, this would also be the 2nd year that he would lead the NBA in three-pointers made, with about 11 less than what he did the year before. He made 261. He also led the NBA in three-pointers attempted, as well, as he was really starting to change the narrative of that game, as he was really starting to make volume three-point shooting his offensive game. In the middle of the 2013-14 season, he would be named to the All-Star game for the very first time in his career. At the conclusion of the season, after this amazing season, after his very first All-Star season, he would go on to make the All-NBA second team. This would be the first time that Steph Curry would make an All-NBA team in his career. And then once the Golden State Warriors would make the playoffs again, they would end up losing in the first round to the Lob City Clippers. This season would end with the San Antonio Spurs beating the Miami Heat, and that was the last time that Tim Duncan had won a championship. Even Greg Popovich has won a championship to this date, all before Stephen Curry had made it out through the second round. His 6th season in Golden State would be his age 26 season in 2014-15. Stephen Curry would go on to start all 80 of the games he played in a season where the Warriors would finish with a 67-15 record. They would go on to finish with the best record in the Western Conference after winning 16 more games in the previous season. This would be the season where Bob Myers was named the Executive of the Year, and after his very first All-Star season, Stephen Curry would be named the MVP, the most valuable player in the league, and I'll get right into it. In his 6th season, he would go on to average 32.7 minutes a game. Those 32.7 minutes a game are the lowest that he's averaged in a full season outside of his injury season up until that point. In those 80 games, while seeing his minutes get drastically reduced, he would go on to average the same amount of points. He averaged 23.8 compared to 24 the year before. He did all this while shooting 48% from the field on nearly 17 shots a game. He shot 44% from 3, making it the 6th year in a row he would shoot at least 40% from 3. He did all this while shooting at least 8 threes per game, the first time he had done so. He would do all of this while shooting 91% from the foul line. This would be the second time in his first 6 seasons that he would lead the NBA in free throw percentage. Alongside his 23.8 points, He would go on to average 4.3 rebounds, which is on par with what he did the year before. He had 7.7 assists, which is the second most amount of assists he would put together in his career. That was the third season in a row he's averaged at least 6 assists. The first 6 years he's averaged at least 5. And this will be the second year in a row that he's averaged at least 7. He would go on to average 2 steals a game for the first time in his NBA career in his first 6 seasons, making it the 6th season to start his career that he would average at least a steal and a half. And at the conclusion of the season, seeing the Warriors finish with the best record in the West, Stephen Curry would, of course, be named an All-Star for the second time in his NBA career. He would be named to the All-NBA First Team for the first time in his NBA career. Not to mention that he would also go on to win the NBA three-point contest in 2015. He would go on to win the NBA's Most Valuable Player, and once the Warriors would make it into the playoffs, they would end up sweeping the Pelicans in the first round when they had Anthony Davis. They would end up beating the Grizzlies in the conference semifinals when the Grizzlies were a well-oiled machine. They would end up beating the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals when James Harden was going off on a tear. And then they would end up winning the NBA Finals, beating the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were a little injury depleted as they were missing Kevin Love for the whole series. And the Cavaliers were missing Kyrie Irving after game 1. But following this win, Andre Iguodala would be named the finals MVP. This would be the very first championship in Stephen Curry's trophy box. And this would be the very first time the Golden State Warriors have won the champion since the 1970s. So this would be a very historic year for the Warriors, especially for Steph Curry, as he was the regular season MVP this year. And of course, and that was just his second appearance in the playoffs. His 7th season in Golden State, following his very first championship, would see him start all 79 of the games he played in a season where the Golden State Warriors would set an NBA record and finish with a 73-9 record to finish the season. They had one more win than the 96 Chicago Bulls. Don't get me exactly right on that. I think that's right. But they would go on to finish with a 73-9 record, the most wins, at least, that an NBA team has ever recorded in its 75-year history. In that season, Stephen Curry would be named the first ever unanimous MVP in history, as prior, LeBron was 1 vote away from getting it in 2012, but Stephen Curry was the first player to get every single vote for MVP in 2016, as he would go on to be the NBA steals leader, finish in the 50-40-90 club. Not to mention that he would also go on to finish with 402 made 3-pointers on the season. So getting into the season itself, his 7th season would see him average 34.2 points per game. 34.2 minutes per game, which was a minute and a half more than what he did his first MVP season. He would go on to average 30 points per game. The first time he would average 30 points per game in his career, it was a 6-point jump from what he had done the year before. He would go on to lead the NBA in scoring for the very first time in his NBA career. He did all this while averaging 20 shots a game. This is the first time he averaged 20 shots a game as well. He shot 50% from the field for the very first time in his 7-year career. This is the only season in his career in which Steph Curry has made over 50% of his shots in his 12-year career. In his 13-year career. He has gone on to make 45% of his threes. That would be the 7th year in a row that he would shoot at least 40% from 3. That would be the 3rd time in his first 7 seasons that he shot at least 45% from 3. And this would be the first time he shot at least 10 threes a game. He made at least 5 of them. And then he would go on to shoot 90.8% from the foul line. He would go on to lead the NBA in free throw shooting while averaging about 5 per game. This was the 2nd year in a row that he had done it, and the 3rd time in his first 7 years in the league that he would lead the NBA, all NBA players in free throw percentage. He would go, and alongside his 30 points per game, which would be his career high at the point, he would go on to average 5.4 rebounds, which to this day is the 2nd most amount of rebounds he's averaged in a season, and at that point was a career high. He would average 6.7 assists, making it the 6th year in a row that he would average at least 6. And then he would also go on to lead the NBA in steals for the only time in his career. He averaged 2.1 steals, making it the 7th year in a row he would average at least 1.5. And it would be the 2nd year in a row that he averaged at least 2. He has not averaged 2 steals a game since his last MVP season. He also averaged 0.2 blocks. He would go on to make 402 three-pointers, the first time he would make at least 300, and the first time anyone in the NBA has made at least 400. Not to mention, he would also lead the NBA in field goals for the only time in his NBA career. So at the end of all this, he would be named the unanimous MVP. This would be the second MVP that he would win. He would be named to the All-Star team for the third time in his NBA career that year. He would also be named to the All-NBA first team for the second time in his NBA career. And just doing so while being named the scoring champion and the steals leader while having a 50-40-90 season. I think hands down, this is Steph Curry's best statistical season. Even the other scoring season, I don't think was probably better than this season. And not to mention that the Warriors would take this momentum with Stephen Curry, the unanimous MVP, and they would have Steve Kerr, the coach of the year. They still had Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. They would go on to beat the Rockets in the first round in five. They would beat the Trailblazers in the second round in 5. They would end up beating the Oklahoma City Thunder in the conference finals in 7 after they were trailing 3-1 at one point. And then after leading the Cavaliers 3-1 after 4 games, the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James would virtually go superhuman and come back and beat the Warriors, as LeBron James and Stephen Curry might have had their best individual seasons coincidentally in the same year. As this season would come to, the Warriors, even though they had the best record in regular season history, would not go on to win this season. But Steph Curry would go on to win the MVP, and this was the lone year that Steve Kerr had won the Coach of the Year. So following that season, Stephen Curry and Draymond Green would somehow lure Kevin Durant, one of the greatest NBA players of all time, to join the Golden State Warriors. So, of course, Stephen Curry's 8th season in Golden State Warriors would see a very big change in the NBA. Of course, everything leaning in his favor. In his 8th season in the league, in his age 28 season, Stephen Curry would start all 79 of the games he played in a season where the Golden State Warriors would go on to finish with a 67-15 record. That was the same record they had when they had won the finals the first time 2 years prior, as they had won 6 games less than their record-breaking season the year before. In the season itself, Draymond Green was named the Defensive Player of the Year, and Bob Myers was named the Executive Year for the second time. Bob Myers has not been named the Executive of the Year since, and Draymond Green has not been, and that was the only time Draymond Green has won the Defensive Player of the Year in his career. In that season with Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry would see his points hover from about 34.2 to about 33.4. He would see his points drop from 30.1 to 25.3. This would be the third season in a row that he would average at least 20, and the second season in a row that he would average at least 25 points per game. He did all this while shooting 46% from the field. This would be the 8th season in a row that he would shoot at least 45% from the field. He would shoot 41% from 3, which would be the lowest free throw shooting percentage in his career up to that point. But of course, that would continue his 8-year streak of shooting at least 40% from 3 in itself, which is an incredible feat. He would shoot 89.8% from the free throw line. This would be the 8th season in a row that he would shoot at least 80%. And the 7th season in his first 8 that he would shoot at least 88% from the foul line. Alongside his 25.3 points following his 2 MVP seasons, he would average 4.5 rebounds, which is about a full rebound less than what he did the year before. He averaged 6.6 assists, which was about on par with what he did the last year. That would be the 5th consecutive season that he would average at least 20 points and 6 assists. At least 22 points and 6 assists for that matter, which is pretty good, especially in the NBA. He would also average 1.8 steals, continuing his 8-year streak of averaging at least a steal and a half per game. At the conclusion of the season, Steph Curry would be named an All-Star for the 4th time in his career. He would go on to be named to the All-NBA second team for the 2nd time in his career, and to this date, he has not been named to the All-NBA second team since 2017. And once the season came to a close, he would go on to compete with the Warriors in the playoffs. And with Kevin Durant, things were a lot easier for them. They would end up sweeping the Trailblazers in the first round, a team they beat in 5 the year before. They would end up sweeping the Jazz in the conference finals. They would end up sweeping the Spurs, including Kawhi, in these conference finals as Kawhi Leonard got hurt in the first game. And then the Warriors would end up beating the Cavaliers in 5 in the NBA finals, as, LeBron really kind of gave it everything he could. But at the same time, the Cavaliers they were definitely not set to match up against the Warriors, even while they had Kyrie. Following the 2016-17 season, Kevin Durant would be named the Finals MVP and win his first championship, and that would be the second championship of Steph Curry's career in a 3-year stint. And then the year that he didn't win it, they had won 3 years in that Finals. And Kevin Durant's first year in Golden State would also be the fifth year straight in which Steph Curry had won or had led the league in three-pointers made, as he had made 324 of them on the year. But after Steph Curry had won his second chip, of course, the path was on. The path was set for him to win his third. His third championship would come in his ninth season with the Golden State Warriors in 2017-2018. He would start all 51 of the games he played in a season where the Warriors finished with a 58-24 record, finishing with the second best record in the West. First time since 2014 that they hadn't finished with the exact best record in the West, ending their 3-year stretch. And within this season itself, Steph Curry would have to deal with an MCL sprain, which is why he ended up starting 51 games. But he would average about 32 minutes, which at that point was a career low in a full season, except for the injured season he had. While seeing his minutes drop by about a point and a half, by a minute and a half, he would see his points go up by a point. He would average 26.4 points per game. This would be the sixth year in a row that he would average at least 22 points per game. This would be the third year in a row he's averaged at least 25. He would do all this while shooting 49% from the field, the second highest field goal percentage he's ever finished the season with. He would shoot 42% from three, making it the ninth year in a row that he would shoot at least 40% from three from beginning to end. He would also lead the league in free throw percentage for the fourth year in his career in his ninth year. He would go on to shoot 92% from the foul line, which is tied for the second best that he would go on to put together in a full season after his second year in the league. And then compared to his second year in the league, he was actually taking 2 more free throws a game, which makes it more impressive. And while averaging 26.4 points per game, Stephen Curry would average 5 rebounds, making it the second time in his career he would average 5 rebounds. He would go on to average 6 assists a game, making it the sixth year in a row that he would average 6 assists. He would also average 1.6 steals per game. He would do all this while clinching and earning his way into his 5th All-Star game in 2018. Not to mention, also in that season, he would go on to be named to the All-NBA third team for the only time that he was in his NBA career. But nonetheless, after missing 30 games, to be making an NBA team at all means that he was definitely putting in a good amount of work this season. And to lead the NBA in free throw percentage is no small feat. Once the Warriors made the playoffs this season in Kevin Durant's second stint with the Warriors, they would end up beating the Spurs in 5 in the first round. They would end up beating the Pelicans in the conference semis when they had Anthony Davis. And then when they had Anthony Davis and I believe Boogie Cousins. And then they would go to the conference semifinals. They were down 3-2 to the Houston Rockets before Chris Paul got hurt. Then the Warriors would end up winning the conference finals by winning the next 2 games. Then they made it to the NBA Finals where they would end up sweeping the Cavaliers. That would be the second time LeBron James had been swept in the NBA Finals. And that would be the second time that Kevin Durant would win the Finals MVP with Stephen Curry on his team. Not to mention that even down the stretch, Stephen Curry was really doing what was needed for him, especially in those playoff series. As in his last championship series, he would go on to average 27.5 points per game. He would do all this while averaging 6 rebounds, 6.8 assists. And compared to his other championship stints, his 27 points per game are the most that he's ever averaged in a series in which he had won the whole thing. So, of course, congratulations to the Warriors, of course, for clinching this title. This would be the third championship that they had won in a 4-year stretch. And ever since then, the Warriors have not won a championship since 2018. I have no idea how long that stretch is going to run, but this would establish them at least as a dynasty or at least within the middle of the 2010s. And following this 2017-2018 season, of course, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry would return for Steph Curry's 10th season with the Golden State Warriors. And of course, in this season itself, with looking at how Steph Curry's 10th season would go, in his age 30 season in 2018-2019, he will go on to start all 69 of the games he played in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 57-25 record. They finished with the best record in the West, making it the 4th time they had done so in a 5-year stretch. And they did this all while winning one less game than the year before. In this season, Stephen Curry would go on to see his minutes go up by about 2 more minutes prior to the year before. In his age 30 season, he would average 27.3 points per game, making it the 4th season in a row he would average at least 25, and making it the 7th year in a row he'd average at least 22. He did all this while shooting 47% from the field on 19 shots. He would also go on to shoot 43% from 3, making it a decade straight in which he has gone on to where he's gone on to shoot at least 40% from 3, which is an incredible decade if you think about it, which is why he was named to the decade team, obviously, if there was a decade team, which would establish him as the best three-point shooter through the 2010s very easily. Not to mention, he did all of this while making 354 threes on the year. This would be the 3rd time in his career that he would make at least 300 threes. To be shooting at least 40% from 3 while making 300 is an insane feat to really think about it when you put those two together. But still, I digress. Steph Curry would also shoot 91.6% from the free throw line. That would be the 6th time in his first decade that he would shoot at least 90% from the free throw line, which is the majority of his career. He would go on, and alongside his 27.3 points, he would average 5.3 rebounds. This would be the 3rd time in his first decade in the league that he would average at least 5 rebounds. He averaged 5.2 assists, making it a decade straight in which he would average at least 5 assists as a starting point guard in the NBA. He averaged 1.3 steals, which at that point was a career low, ending his 9-year stretch of averaging at least 1.5 steals per game, but he would go on to average at least a steal for a decade straight. Once the 2018-19 season was officially over, Steph Curry would go on to make his 6th consecutive All-Star game. In 2019, he would go on to make the first team All-NBA again. This would be the 3rd time that he had made it in his career. The last time he made it was when he was the MVP. This is the only time that he made it with Kevin Durant as a teammate. Once the Warriors made the playoffs with the best record in the West, they would end up beating the Clippers in the first round in 6. They would end up beating the Rockets in the conference semis in 6. They would end up sweeping the Trailblazers in the conference finals, as that is the furthest that the Trailblazers had ever gotten. Once they got to the finals, after dealing with injuries to Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, the Warriors would end up falling short. The Raptors would end up winning this series 4-2, making it a half decade in which the Warriors had ended up in the NBA Finals. They had won 3 of them. All 3 of their wins came against the Cavaliers. Their first loss came against the Cavs, and then their second loss in that stretch, in their last appearance in the finals since, was to the Toronto Raptors in the NBA Finals. And there's only been one full season since then, but so the Golden State Warriors have not been to the NBA Finals since, but they very well could this season. But following this 2018-19 season, Kevin Durant would end up leaving the Golden State Warriors to join the Brooklyn Nets. And all within the season, Klay Thompson would be hurt all year. And then in 2019-2020, Stephen Curry would end up playing about 5 games before he ended up getting hurt while trying to take a charge. But he would end up he would break his metacarpal, but instead of coming back, he would end up taking like the whole season off. In his age 31 season in 2019-2020, he would start only 5 games for a Golden State Warriors team that would go 15-50. They finished with the worst record in the West without Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, I imagine as well. No, Draymond Green I think was playing, but they were definitely playing without Steph. As 2019-2020 was the season that saw all the players that make the playoffs, or at least the players that were eligible to play for the bubble, but I don't think Steph Curry and the Warriors really qualify for this. In the 5 games he played, he averaged 21 points while shooting 40% from the field. He shot 24% from 3, which ended his decade-long streak of averaging 40% from 3. But of course, this was a lost season, but still noteworthy. He also would go on to make all of his free throws this year, as well as he attempted 5.2 per game, just to get a sense of how well he's playing. He's 26 for 26 doing the math in my head. Alongside his 20.8 points in those 5 games, he was averaging 5.2 rebounds and 6.6 assists, pretty much on par for what you expect him to do. He was still able to keep his streak of averaging at least 1 steal a game alive, as this would be the 11th year in a row that he would do so. But like I said, this would be a lost season for the Warriors that would end up benefiting them because they ended up getting the number 3 overall pick for going into 2020. James Wiseman out of Memphis, I believe. And once the Warriors would end up drafting James Wiseman, they would virtually be ready for the playoffs again. In Steph Curry's 12th season with the team in his age 32 season in 2020-2021, the most recent full season that's been played in the NBA, Steph Curry would go on to start all 63 of the games he played in a season where the Warriors would finish with a 39-33 record. They would go on to qualify for the play-in tournament, as they would end up losing in that play-in rounds to a fadeaway shot from LeBron James over Steph Curry. That's actually how their season ended, as Klay Thompson was completely out, so Steph Curry would kind of have to carry the load this year too. In his age 32 season, he would go on to be named an All-Star yet again in his first full season back. Without Kevin Durant, he would average 34.2 minutes a game, which was about what he was doing his last full season. He would go on to lead the NBA in scoring for the second time in his career. He would average 32 points per game. This would be the second time in his career that he's averaged at least 30. This would go on to be the 5th time in a 6-year stretch, excluding the injured season, excluding the lost season, that he would average at least 25. And this would be 8 full years straight in which he would average 22 points per game. He would average 32 points while shooting 48% from the field on 21.7 attempts per day. He would hit a career high in field goals made and field goals attempted along with his points. He would go on to shoot 42% from 3 while attempting nearly 13 threes a game. This would be his 11th year in his first 12 years of shooting at least 40% from 3. He did all of this while taking 12.7 threes, the most amount of threes that he attempted per game. He will go on to shoot 91% from the foul line, which would, of course, be the 4th season in a row that he would shoot at least 90. This would be the 6th season in the last 7, and this would be the 8th season in his first 12 that he would shoot at least 90% from the foul line. That is 2/3 of his career through the end of last year. Alongside his 32 points, he'll go on to average 5.5 rebounds, which would be the 5th time that he's done that in his career. He would go on to average 5.8 assists, making it 12 years straight of averaging at least 5 assists per game. He would also average 1.2 steals, keeping the streak alive of averaging at least 1 steal per game. At the conclusion of the 2020-21 season, although the Warriors did not make the playoffs, Stephen Curry, of course, would be selected as an All-Star, and at this time, Stephen Curry was selected for the 7th time in his NBA career. He would go on to be named to the All-NBA First Team for the 4th time in his career, they have not named the All-NBA teams for this season, but I imagine this is, as of today, 2021 is the last time that Steph Curry has been named to the All-NBA First Team. This would be his scoring champion year. 2020 was also the last year he led the league in scoring. And following the 2021 season, like I said, the Warriors would go to the play-in game, and they would end up losing to the Lakers on the last shot. But following Steph Curry's 12th season, the last full season he's played, this transitions us perfectly into this season. Steph Curry is in his 13th season. I said 12th earlier, but he's in his 13th. So far this season, he's played roughly a full season's worth of games. He started all 62 of the games he's played for a Golden State Warriors team that is currently holding the 3rd best record in the NBA, the 3rd best record in the West as well. They sit 8 games at the moment behind the Suns, as they've won their last 3 games and 4 of their last 10. They're trying to hold on to a home seed spot. At the moment, they're sitting 4 games ahead of the 5th place Dallas Mavericks. In this season so far, Steph Curry is averaging 34.9 minutes a game, which is the most minutes that he's averaged since his very first All-Star season in 2013-14. And in a season that's seen Klay Thompson come back and a lot of Warriors role players really get into it, Stephen Curry this season right now is averaging 25.5 points per game. At the moment, this is the 6th straight full season that he's played in which he's averaged at least 25, which is, impressive in its own right. He's doing this while shooting 43% from the field. That is actually his career lowest field goal percentage he shot in a full season in his career, excluding his injury seasons. All this while he's doing this while on the 19.3 attempts a game. He's shooting 37.8% from three. If this season were to end today, this would be the very first season except his injury season in which he didn't shoot 40% from three. But even his career low, 37.8, is a lot higher than a lot of NBA players' career high. He would go on to shoot, or as of right now, he is shooting 92% from the free throw line this season, making it the 5th year in a row that he will do it if he finishes out. This would be the 9th year that he would shoot 90% from the free throw line in his first 13 seasons, considering that's the majority of his free throws. For his career, he is a 90% free throw shooter. And then alongside his 25.5 points per game, he will go on to average 5.3 rebounds, which was on par with what he'd been doing before. That'll be the 5th year in a row, in the 6th year in his last 7 in which he's averaged at least 5 rebounds. Right now, he's averaging 6.4 assists per game. This is hopefully the 8th time in his career that he's averaged at least 6 assists, and he's averaging 6.5 for his career. He's averaging 1.4 steals per game this season, as he is continuing his streak of 13 years in the league, averaging at least a steal. His 0.4 blocks this season are actually tied with his career high from 2019 and 2020. As of right now, he has already clinched the All-Star game and has already been named the All-Star game MVP. Of course, congrats to him for being named the All-Star game MVP. That's the only time in his career that he's been named. The season is not officially over. The Warriors are maybe a couple of games away from clinching a playoff spot. But they have not done so yet. They have not named all NBA teams yet, and we just gotta wait to see how the season ends, just to see how Stephen Curry's age 13 season ends. But being here compared to last year's season, of course, we now got to see how Stephen Curry's season ended last year, and hopefully we get to see what he does over this next year, between now and next year. With that said, I want to thank the NBA, the Pro and College Basketball Reference websites, and the Wikipedia articles that I needed for the stats and figures for this episode. I wouldn't be able to do this without them. With that said, today is Monday, March 14th, 2022, St. Patrick's Day. With this said, once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back with all of today's exhibitions and matchups, give an episode on these tomorrow on Tuesday, March 15th. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll see what Stephen Curry does. We'll add more to his profile so that we can just gawk and look at all and see what Stephen Curry is doing year in and year out, which is virtually unprecedented. Thanks once again for listening to my piece. I do hope all is well. If you ever get a chance to watch Stephen Curry, he wears number 30 for the Golden State Warriors. I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.